May I sit?
It's 5 p.m. and we're going to call this meeting to order. It is Wednesday, April 9th. We're located in the HJ McAllister Administration Boardroom for a special call meeting and a board workshop. Do we have any audience with patrons? No, we have no audience with patrons, so we're going to move on to the third item of business, which is the second reading of Board Policy Update 124. A, CCA local, B, CBA local, C, CY local, D, DH local, E, EHB local, F, EHBB local, G, FFG local, and HGKA local. Is there a motion to be made?
Motion. Make a motion for the second reading?
Yes.
Make a motion for the second reading of the policy update.
All right, there's a motion on the table. Is there a second to the motion? All right, we have a first and a second. Any questions, comments? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. All right, number 4, consider and take possible action regarding superintendent's evaluation. Is there a motion to be made?
Do you need a motion on this one?
Yes.
You do, okay. Make a motion to approve superintendent's evaluations discussed in closed session.
There's a motion on the table. Is there a second to the motion? Second. All right, is there any question, comments, any further discussion? All in favor? Oh, sorry.
Okay, I didn't see anywhere that.
Yes, ma'am.
It's the motion that's been passed. Second. I would like to say,
In closed session?
but yeah, we can go back.
We're not going back today.
Oh, yeah.
No, ma'am. Yeah, there's no closed session today.
That's fine.
Sure. So we have a first on the table, a motion on the table with a first and a second. Any further comments or questions? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 5-1. All right, number 5, consider and take possible action to authorize the board president to retain legal services from Thompson & Horton LLP. Is there a motion to be made?
I move to authorize the board president to retain legal services from Thompson & Horton LLP on behalf of the board of trustees deemed necessary and appropriate in his discretion.
All right, is there a second to the motion?
I second.
All right, just a quick blurb. I placed this item on the agenda to ask you all to approve me to retain legal services from Thompson & Horton LLP. Thompson & Horton is a prominent school law firm with its principal office in Houston. I'm requesting to work with this firm specifically because of the board's previous attorney, Morgan Bean, now works at this firm. I'd like to involve Morgan in the sensitive personnel matter of which you are all aware from our discussions in closed sessions at previous meetings. In order to prevent our current law firm from any actual or perceived conflict of interest in advising the board on the issue. I cannot discuss this matter in open session, of course. If you authorize me to take action, I will ask Morgan to be at our next meeting to allow us to discuss this issue in detail. Are there any questions or? Yes, ma'am.
So you want to go to Morgan because Morgan is our attorney.
Because there has been a couple questions about conflict of interest from our current law firm and the personnel issues.
Yeah, okay. So I'm not.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions or comments? All right, hearing none. All in favor? Opposed? All right. Motion passes 5-1. All right, moving into our budget workshop. Dr. Mack.
Yes, I will be sharing, if I haven't already, some supplementary notes with the information that was in the board book. But again, I've got my team here to answer questions on those items. I'll do a quick share of your key notes. I advise that you're welcome to open it now. At the same time, there's a lot of information that we'll cover as we go. I think of early college, high school, and that information is substantial. It's not, of course, it's not an action item, but it is substantial. So we wanted the opportunity for the team to go through it And so I'll share that with you as supplementary notes. First item is a legislative update. As we prepare for the budget season, what I would caution everyone on is, and I know Vince and I talked about this morning, there's a lot up in the air with regard to budget and formulas. To give you an idea, one of the biggest defeasement, M&O loan defeasement ideas that we had was the beta. That's a voter approved tax rate election as an option, not as anything we're exploring at this time, but we're trying to find every single option. The reason I say it's time to watch with caution is that there isn't a lot of information that the Senate and the House have agreed upon. Obviously, there's a lot of things to be settled. However, both sides, under current law, both sides have language that may prevent a waiver. And so, although there's no commitment to any strategies mentioned tonight, zero, there is law in that legislation. There's language in that legislation that may be prohibited. And so there's a lot of strategies with budget. For instance, on the House side, what we're seeing is we're seeing a lot of formula changes. Formulas could be allotment. So there's language on the basic allotment. And for those that are listening online, the basic allotment, that is the most discretionary way to fund the district. That is giving you a lump sum and saying you have the best needs of the district at your heart, and so you have a lot of autonomy. We're seeing a shift in the legislation. We're not seeing any laws passed, but there's a definite shift. It's all based on, much of it is based on allotments and formula spending. For example, you know that the school security safety audit that we went through recently was pretty much funded through the school safety allotment. The school safety allotment for the past few years has been about $32,000, and we have spent into the millions on requirements by the state, unfunded mandates by the state, such as our new strategics badge panic button. That was one of the last initiatives to come in. So all the expenses far outweigh the allotment. So 32,000 doesn't pay for one salary. There has been an increase proposed, but nothing is there. So to be strategic in that regard, once we know that formula change for the security audit, there may be a mention of CTE tonight too. I know Principal Mosier Flores, you've watched that very closely. I've seen a number of things with CTE. Tonight we'll talk about pre-K partnerships, which is probably the most innovative thing that I've ever heard of, much less been a part of in my 30-year career. And that window is open, wide open. Not only is it open, all the legislative leanings are towards expanding and increasing funding. And so that's definitely something I'm very excited. It's still on the table, very innovative, very out of the box, but we look forward to sharing that tonight as well. And so in just a second, Vince was going to weigh in a little bit before we get into the next section on the RFP. But Vince, could you share, you shared with me just a little bit about the uncertainty of the information that's coming out, such as the very global comments that we typically get in a legislative session. The one that's most interesting to me is the number that was thrown out there for the all-important teacher raises.
Yeah, so right now what's being proposed is you're seeing base allotment proposals of 3.2 billion, different allotment increases into billions, but then overall what's being, I guess, set aside for teacher raises across the state, in total is 750 million. You take that divided by the number of teachers across the state, across districts, it's really not going to amount to much. So a lot of that relief is going to essentially come from potentially the allotment, some of those pieces. But I was part of a Caswell meeting on Friday. There's a legislative update that we had, and a lot of that was just, there's a lot of uncertainty talking to my peers in the region. I believe the number, we did a peer survey before we went out there on Friday night, and I think there's 14 districts within the region when it comes to compensation plans, just because of the uncertainty of it all. We're waiting until the end of the legislative session to see what's going to happen. Something just to comment on, and it's something I know we've talked about in previous workshops, even back in the fall and even last budget cycle. One of those was, okay, we can start looking at, compensation plans, but at the same time, if you decide to give a 3% midpoint increase right now, and then the state turns around and says, gosh, I'll give a 3% increase to teachers, well, then at that point, the 3% increase that we gave in the spring, or say we potentially adopt in the spring, won't count towards what the state's giving or mandating that we do. there's some funding that they'll funnel through, or potentially hopefully funnel through. So at that point, you're paying, you're paying for a 3% mandated increase, but then you're also adopting an additional 3% on top of that, that the state's not covering. There's a lot of uncertainty just in terms of Vader, like Dr. Mack said, in 2019, when they did increase the basic allotment, there was language that it just was disadvantageous to districts because it goes back in time and says, okay, you had to adopt a plan as of January 1st. So now that's made a lot of people, especially here in our region, very concerned, saying, well, what if, a lot of us are looking at the fact that we may have to go out for a Vader. And if you're having to go out for a Vader and they end up increasing the basic allotment and then they put this restrictive language in there, it kind of puts us in a bad spot and it puts us in a position where we might not be able to go out for something that gives us room. So there's a lot of constraints there, looking at potential legislative language that's out there saying going from a simple majority of more than 50% to now a super majority of 60%. Not 60% of your voter base, but 60% of the voters that turn out. And so that's where it makes it very difficult. They're trying to make it more restrictive for bonds. And we've talked about the easement claims. We talked about that with Joey and with Lewis in the fall. Just kind of looking at, okay, we maintain our INS rate at whatever we have it at, let's just say it's 70 cents, just using a round figure right now. So we maintain that going into next tax season, and we maintain that INS rate here. That would create, let's say, $18 million worth of capacity for us on the INS side for us to sit there and say, okay, let's go out for an $18 million bond. Well, now the state's proposing a defeasance penalty. So they're taking away a lot of the tools that we have to try to bring relief to ourselves locally. Of course, there's a lot of different things out there, even on the M&O side. I'm talking about just removing the M&O ad valorem tax entirely. I don't see that happening because that's just a major move. But essentially, the message we got was, okay, you're, the powers that be, won't name names, but are basically saying they want to give more local control, but everything that's being proposed is taking control out of our hands. So, just kind of wanted to give you a brief synopsis of some of the things I heard.
And I think a part of that, Vince, and you kind of jog my memory on a piece of this. When we say a voter-approved tax rate election, first of all, to even qualify for that option to really bring in some solid money for the district, you have to have capacity with your current collections. I would encourage everyone, and perhaps in a future board meeting, we can show just how much we've compressed the tax rate here locally. So there is capacity. How much capacity is there? It's untouched and everything worked perfectly. Approximately $4 million, not a one-time $4 million, a reoccurring $4 million. All that is contingent upon the legislature. So part of what we do tonight is to ease anxiety and ease concerns and to share all of the options that are still on the table. Until they're off the table, we're going to keep working and we're going to keep playing. And so that potential is still there. And until they close the door, that's just an opportunity. But again, because we have the capacity, because the tax rate is at a lower rate, and again, those are published and we'll be sharing out as we move forward how much the tax rate has gone down over the last few years. We know that property values are going up, and we do not control that. We do not control property values in any way, shape, or form. So that's just a little bit more on Vader. And so we have the extra collections potential. We have the capacity. No one is suggesting it. In a perfect world, that could bring approximately $4 million of value to the budget above what we currently have. And so again, I understand a lot of maybes tonight, but it's good to have options. We'll move on to the next piece here. Are there any questions about legislative?
Can I add one more piece to that as far as taxes go and just a potential legislation? Once again, one thing that kind of muddied the waters is, and probably will pass again because we saw an increase in homestead exemption tax go jump from 40 to 100,000, and so that would, definitely muddy the waters not only for us trying to project it and project a budget based off of that. Of course, we're going to project like basically budget like it would pass. We're seeing, we thought it was going to be a very minimal increase. What we're seeing in legislation and some of the bills that are being proposed is a jump from 100 to 140. So once again, they're saying that will hold us harmless for that, but based on what we saw last time, it's not necessarily guaranteed that we're really truly held harmless in some of those situations. Like Dr. Mack mentioned, on top of that, property taxes are continuing to rise. That's something that we talked about back in the fall as well. When we met the financial advisor, it's like it's a matter of okay. And myself, as well as the other districts in the county, we met with Ron Barker, the tax assessor collector, had us, all come in and meet with them. And what we are actually what's known as a floor district based on compression. So we're basically compressed to the max here in the state. So we're the floor as far as compression goes in the state.
Moving on, before we get into the RFP, we are always looking for opportunities for savings, for efficiency, and in many cases, just outright benefits to staff. And so this evening, we're going to be presenting on a request for proposals that we approved in a previous meeting. Potentially, no commitment, custodial services. And I'm going to turn it over at this time to Mr. Boujek to introduce our guests and we're going to give it a little general overview of where we are on this, who came on top of the process. This is a very legal procurement process. This process, some information cannot be shared due to legal reasons. The timeline of the RFP is somewhat rigid because it's our guarantee to the folks who apply for our RFP. So we're going to adhere to that specific timeline. But tonight we wanted to talk about some bottom line issues and some kind of surprises for the board to consider. The board's not committed, but for the board to consider. I'll tell you right now some of the myths that I was lucky enough to receive that were out there. Visiting with some of our custodial staff was concerns about what about leave, what about vacation, what about benefits. And so in this process, that was probably the biggest eye-opener to me. As a matter of fact, I just talked to our custodian that serves us here in this room and shared a little bit about it, just as far as, because obviously that was one of the people I talked to that had that concern. And so, Brent, at this time, I'll turn it over to you, and I know Brent and Carly couldn't be here tonight, but Vince is here, and Vince, thank you for entrusting Carly on this. I'm telling you, it has been one of the most cleanest, well-organized RFPs I've ever seen, and I've seen quite a few from my former district. Very clean, very organized, very structured, and so great process, and we'll adhere to that process tonight. But Brent, anything you have to open up with this time?
Yeah, just kind of hitting on Dr. Mack's point about the legal parameters of the whole RFP. It's a real legal process for procurement. Tonight we have Mr. Luke Bruns and Paul Riojas from AHI to present some information to you about their company. We're just kind of in our timeline phase. This is where we're at. Our next process would try to get us onto the board agenda for next week to take possible action, whether it's approval, denial, or table. And then try to have a decision in April. That way we can enter some negotiation pieces and have time to make that transition if the board decides to make that transition.
And so a point of clarification there, if having it on the April 15th does not mean action, no action table. What it means is, given the times, if let's say the board receives information and says, hey, this is good for staff, or this is good for the district, how we want to shake that out, in order to meet the timeline that's printed in the RFP, you must at least consider it at the April 15th. Does that, I hope that brings some comfort. It's just meeting, as I said before, the legal parameters of the RFP and being honest to our folks who apply. So.
And for clarification, the RFP process has been completed, and this is who we would like.
Yes, sir.
To consider.
Yes, sir. This is the recommendation to you. So at that time, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Luke and Mr. Paul and open it up for questions from the board. And they just passed out a packet that they'd like to go over with the board. Dr. Mack, do you have anything?
Sure, just part of that is as we go along, we'd like to provide the background to this. Of course, the RFP as we shared just a second ago was substantial. And so the substantial proposal has been shared with the board. Obviously, the committee went through it with you, and part of the final process was an interview with them as well. So there was the confidential criteria within the RFP. And then you have the option of doing interviews at the end of it. We chose to do the option. You all were kind enough with the few others that were selected to interview. And yes, you came out as far as we've given you notice as the top performer for consideration. So please take it away.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for allowing us to be here this evening. This is, the RFP was outstanding, by the way, very detailed. I do this for a living. This is what I've done for 20 years with this company. And you'll be surprised at some of the RFPs we get where we're having to ask a lot of different questions and pull things together. And this was very well put together. So that was a good thing. My name is Luke Bruns. I'm the VP of Business Development for AHI. And this is my VP of Operations, Paul Riojas, that I have with me here. He makes it happen in the operations side of things. But AHI, a little history about us. Been in business for 57 years. We're a woman-owned business based here in Texas. Our corporate headquarters in Dallas, Texas, but we have accounts throughout the entire state. We have a large Houston branch, as well as we also service University of Houston, Victoria on the other side of you guys. So we have you surrounded here. Love to continue the process of working with you. Specialization, what we do our schools. I mean, we do a handful of headquarter campuses as well, but we're about 70% higher ed and school districts. So that's our specialty. That's what we focus on as a company. You'll see, the board will see a number of the different clients that we service. So Baylor University is our largest customer in Texas as far as schools go. But we have many different school districts, Marshall ISD, Paris ISD, Wichita Falls ISD, Argyle ISD. And we included all of those different references for you guys in our proposal to reach out to them. But we've been through the entire process of going through in-house operation to outsourced. We did that with Community ISD a couple of years ago, and we're sensitive to that as we go through it with those customers. So it's something that we have a lot of experience with. But another key thing that really separates us, we've got a small amount of competitors that have this as well, but we are what we call a SIMS certified company with honors. Now, SIMS is similar to like an ISO 9000 certification, and it's something we have to go through every 2 years in order to remain SIMS certified. So we achieved this first in 2010, and we go through it every 2 years where we will actually have auditors that will come in, look at our systems and our processes at the corporate level, from accounting to payroll. They will also go in and hand select a number of our different accounts where they'll go through and make sure that we're doing what we say and we say what we're doing in those accounts. And that's something that really sets us apart. We feel the SIMS is based on 5 key components. That's quality systems, service delivery, human resources, health, safety, and environmental stewardship, and management commitment. And so that's something that we go through. And a little side note, we do have some competitors that get SIMS certified in a specific account that requires that, but their entire organization may not require that. So they may not be, we are SIMS certified company-wide. So every account that we service, we have to adhere to these different standards and criteria to maintain that. And I included just our latest certification, which is in there as well in the packet. But I'll hit on a few other things that differentiate us a little bit from our competitors. We don't subcontract in any of our accounts 100%. So every employee is a W-2 employee. It's gone through I-9 verification, background checks, and drug screening as they're hired on. And our people are that's the most important part of our company, is our people. And taking care of our people is a big deal in our industry. We see a lot of competitors, multi-billion-dollar competitors in our industry that treat the employees like a number. And janitorial is something that's done behind the scenes, and it's unappreciated a lot of times. And so we try to go the extra mile to show that appreciation with our employees. We have many different employees start out as frontline general cleaners that are actually now project managers of campuses in excess of 2 million square feet. So we can't always offer large raises with our tight budgets with districts and whatnot, but we can offer that process of promoting from within. And that's something that's been a big deal within our company. I've been there 20 years and I've experienced it firsthand. We also provide employee rewards programs for performance, attendance, gift cards. We create a team environment with monthly team building cookouts and meetings, and we provide servant leadership for management. Our managers mentor all of these employees and work with them. We also try to get involved in the communities that we are working in through community outreach, volunteering. One of the accounts that we service, we've had a number of the different managers and employees that work in a local food pantry through volunteers. So we want to invest in the community and be involved as a corporation. Our training and education. So all of our frontline employees will go through monthly in-depth safety and service training, and then our operations management will go through annual third-party training for CEUs, continuing education units, and that's with International Sanitary Supply Association, Association of Physical Plant Administrators, International Facility Management Association, and many other organizations. So culture of putting our people first has helped with our recruiting and retention. So just like I go after businesses with references of showing what we've done and how the different facilities managers and teams will talk about how good of work we've done, it's important for us to have that reputation amongst cleaners too. And so that's helped us remain. We're 95% staff in every K-12 account that we service throughout Texas and Oklahoma. And we stayed that way through COVID, where we had a lot of competitors that were down on their numbers. So I think taking care of our people is a huge deal. The difference, you know, when we toured this site, the different campuses, there's sometimes we tour them and we don't see a whole lot of, we saw a lot of opportunity to make a big impact here. And that's a huge deal for us. If we don't see an opportunity to make a big impact, we're not as excited about it. We're excited about working with this district because we feel there's opportunity to come in and make a big impact on the cleaning level. We utilize innovative technology. All of our vacuum cleaners are dual filtration. We use the lithium-ion battery packs with the backpack vacuums. Utilizing good equipment can really make a big impact, and it can reduce the workload on the labor. And so that's something we focus a lot on. We utilize color-coded microfiber rags and flat mop systems that prevents cross-contamination, keeps everything healthy and clean. Spartan and Ecolab are the two different chemical lines that we utilize. So either one of those, if the district has a preference, we're open to that. Another thing that really sets us apart, we feel, is our employee work distributions. We see a lot of our competitors and in in-house operations where they basically give them a mop and a broom and they have the cleaners go clean. And that's not the right way to go about it. From our perspective, we try to put together an employee work distribution that outlines everywhere that employee is throughout that building, breaks down their shift into 10, 15-minute increments, and puts together a plan of action of how they're going to clean the building to be most effective. Within the first 30 to 60 days of that contract, Paul and his team are refining that so that we can increase those efficiencies, so that we can create a good job flow for each employee. That's for the day employees as well as the night employees that we do that. We also put together periodic charts that basically takes everything out of a 1 week periodic. If we've got high dusting in lobby areas or carpet care, maintenance, or different items in the scope of work that fall out of a weekly basis, we put that into a calendar in a 52-week year, and we'd have that defined. Okay, this is going to be done on this week. And sometimes changes need to be made due to an imperfect world, but that's a good outline and a plan for our team to follow, where the supervisors can just look at that and say, okay, we've got to accomplish this, and this week to stay on task. We utilize a lot of different metrics from our quality control inspections to adjust those operations as needed to continue providing superior cleaning results for your district here. And then a big thing that's really made a huge difference with a lot of our clients that we started as we got into the SIM certification process is doing trimester business reviews within the schools. At a lot of our corporate campuses, we would do quarterly business reviews. For schools, we'll do the trimester reviews where basically we sit down and have a roundtable with all of your key stakeholders. We talk about the previous semester's successes, failures, and whatnot with custodial, and how we can continue to change and grow with the district to provide you guys consistent, better quality service. Getting into a few more of the details that I feel makes us the right choice for you guys, our QC program, tracking all the different KPIs and metrics. the accountability. So our day porters, supervisors will be staffed with data phones. Having a paper trail is important, and accountability throughout the company is a big deal for us. Providing transparency with our timekeeping reports. Every employee that will be on district will clock in and out with facial recognition software that we have set up for our different timekeeping stations. The employee work distributions and periodic charts, and then having multiple managers' eyes on the account, ensuring the success. So in addition to the project manager that we would have a quality control visiting on a monthly basis, environmental health and safety that will do their inspections, and then Paul as the VP of operations would be checking in as well. So I'm trying to think of some other, the employees that we put on this, we would have full-time employees. We do have a higher level of benefits than many of our competitors with paid time off, vacation time that we offer as well for those full-time employees. We do keep all the employees on throughout the entire summer break. We have a lot of competitors that will downsize in the summer, and then they're behind the 8 ball as they try to ramp up whenever school starts. We put those employees on project work to make sure that they're getting the buildings nice and detailed, doing all the floor work and things of that nature. Lastly, the innovation and technology, utilizing the advanced technology allows for increased productivity and cleaning effectiveness, and then AHI's reputation within the industry. Don't take my word for it. We gave you guys about, I think about 10 or 12 references. We'd love you guys to reach out to them. We're happy to tour you through any of those and open up our entire book of business for you guys to hand select any account you'd like to take a look at. And that's pretty much all I got. I'm happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
I always thought things out.
Okay.
I have
Can
two
Dr.
questions.
Mack make one comment real quick before
Just-
we jump in with
Yes,
questions?
and
Just real
just
fast.
real quick, you reminded me of a couple of things.
Okay.
The one thing that I wanted the board to be aware of, as far as just if the only criteria was bottom line dollar, for us, and just our numbers, it's almost equal. So the question for us became, we would want the board to consider quality of service as in dedication, training, mentoring. I visited with an area superintendent who has a similar service. They said the intentionality and the support for the employee who may be trying to get a hold of the supervisor, they have that intentional training. That was something else when we talked about the training that we do and the training that you all do. And I think of things, heaven forbid, things like COVID and things of that nature. Also the equipment upgrades that you guys would be in charge of running and also telling us how you were going to potentially bring that equipment in and the timeline. I'll just say a little bit about timeline before I completely turn it over. But timeline, you know, we talked about that and how quick we could stand it up given the board's final decision, which isn't committed. But I just wanted to say that about the bottom line and then mention a couple things about the training, the mentorship support, and of course the paid time off, and as it says here, 1 week of paid vacation. I say that again because some of my custodians, I told them we're going to have a recording if you want to hear this stuff, so they're very excited. We will have some folks just listening, and that's all we ask. I'm sorry. Go right ahead.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having us.
We have a tag here in Bay City. I am so Bay City. And I like it. I love my little community. I love the school district. I love everything that we're bringing aboard. But I love you coming here tonight to share what you do. So let me start here. You said, not in my words, but I mean in your words, but in mine. I need to ask you, you mentioned some of it, you were going to do some intentional training. You're gonna make impact on services, the equipment that you're bringing in, the updates and the training, all of that from our school district. My concern is looking at this and what you just submitted, told us, I think we are doing it. So my next question, before you answer that, our custodians, are very dedicated. They are dedicated here because they love Bay City also. And most of them are from here. Can you commit or can you tell me how many of those employees that we have that you really to rehire?
Yeah, we want to give every employee that you have the opportunity to come on board. We've, the RFP was very well put together. We did see wage rates and they were lower than what we start out. So there's opportunity there for raises. And we also want to interview and give any employee that is on site the opportunity to come to work for us. And we've done that at one of our recent in-house to outsource transitions being Community ISD. And there's a large portion of those employees that are still with us on there, but it takes a can-do attitude. We want to give everybody the right opportunity within this. We are going to restructure most likely the way that the buildings are cleaned. We did take your employee headcount and look at that, and that's very important, and we wanted to match that because we don't want to assume that we know everything. But I feel like there are plenty of opportunities for us to increase efficiencies, but we want to give every employee the opportunity to come forward and work for us. That makes, they make our lives easier. They know the buildings, they know the teachers, and we want to help them the same way they help us.
Okay. And on a personal note of that, most of our custodians are mentors. During testing time, especially, they're there helping with the testing.
Okay.
If you are being a service, which is only there to do that service, I said it's a personal thing. I just can't imagine the kind of attention you are willing to give versus what we already have. And I've heard from both teachers, I've heard from parents, I've heard from, they love that connection that the students have with the custodians. They love that the custodians are treating those kids just like they would want theirs to be treated. I don't think, let me use that pronoun, I don't think a service like y'all's can be that person. Now, you said there will be a morning crew and a night crew. So, and then you also mentioned that I think I lost in there. You talked about a project manager. So then is project manager like our head custodians?
Yes, ma'am.
So then what are you offering that we don't already have?
Can I ask a clarifying question just for Mike? You said that our custodians are helping with testing. What do you mean?
They mentor those kids. They help them prepare. Just like you and I will go into school and volunteer to help with the testing. The custodians are doing it.
Okay.
The custodians are doing it.
I was just making
Yeah.
sure for state assessment, there's some
No,
very.
Yeah, that's why I was like, wait, let's get some clarification
Okay.
real quick. So that's why I asked.
Okay.
And
No.
we do comply with all of those. Right?
Yeah.
We do.
And surely I just assumed that you wouldn't think that I was talking about you going in the classroom, taking a test form. I just assumed that. But thank you for the clarification. I appreciate that. I'm still trying to understand what you were bringing. You said updated equipment. Okay. We do employees banquets each year. They have days during the school year where our custodians are recognized. These things are already happening. So I don't see the twist here that would make me think that our current custodians can't do what you are offering. Maybe the technology you're talking about, maybe, and I'm quite sure that you're providing training. Yes.
Yes,
thank
ma'am.
you.
So
I like
I'd like to speak on that. So
Okay.
they're specialized in custodial services. Obviously, the district, we employ our custodians. We try our best to give them the best quality equipment, quality training, but they specialize in it. They are certified to do this. This is all they do. Here at the district, we're multifaceted. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of effort to get all these things processed and get done. We're trying our best to get those done. We're exploring every avenue to make sure that happens. But if they take this over and they really run with this program, I think you would see a real change in the quality of the buildings, the appearance of the buildings, the cleanliness of the buildings, because they are specialized in custodial services. They specialize in that training and make sure those employees are trained, doing it properly, and they hold them accountable for that.
And that is savings to the district.
And the savings to the
I
district.
was gonna ask, Dr. Mack, you said it's almost equal bottom line costs. Are we on which side, or is it a true equal trade-off?
And so one of the things that is important is, Carly actually has the number, and I don't know, Vince, yeah. We will definitely get that. It's incredibly close, but the eye opener, even in this situation, is if you look at a bottom line total expense to the district, however, you hear that starting wages are higher, that means more money in the pockets. We have custodians, and I'm passionate about this. We have custodians that come to work and they work for insurance. And all that I say is we want to provide all the answers to every question, every devil's advocate question. We want to get those out of the way because we do have time, and this isn't not tonight, but to clarify. So that was an eye opener to me. It was, I will tell you, without quoting the number, it was very close with a slight, and when I say slight, I mean slight, it's almost identical towards custodial services.
Our current cost, we're understaffed right now. So if we could get the full staff, we'd have to be spending more.
Yep. We're actually 7 or 9 custodians short currently.
Yeah.
So when I read through the paperwork and workbook, the things that I saw were the wages y'all are paying more than we're offering at this point. The benefits, all of the same things, the time off, like you said, but I think the biggest thing for me was, number one, the pay was more, but number two, the training. Reading through the documents that were provided to us, the training that y'all do, I don't know what our training program looks like. And so I know you said that you're trying, you do a lot of different things and have your hands going a lot of different ways. And so I think that's a big thing as well for our students,
yes,
as well as for the custodial team in general, just to be able to have that training and to ensure that we are cleaning thoroughly.
So that's been part of my 4 months here, is examining that portion of that aspect of that group and seeing what are we doing, how are we holding them accountable, what can we improve. And I've noted a lot of room for improvement. I'm working with certain people that currently supply us supplies that offer free training and things like that, and working on getting that set up for our custodians, depending on how we make our decision here. It's all going to fall into place whichever way we decide to go, but there are certain things where we can improve as a district on the training side of things. But like you mentioned, their starting pay is higher than ours. Their benefits are a little bit better than ours. Their paid time off, they specialize in these things. So it'll all fall into place wherever it needs to, whichever way we decide to go. But there are a lot of moving parts to this, and we just want to make sure that we get the best quality of service to our staff and our students, so that way they can succeed.
Okay, let me ask you this. I'm sorry. Then what was your job?
What is my job?
If we bring in the service, who supervises those service people? Is it you, or do they bring someone in to help with the supervision?
So they would have a project manager on site that supervises their employees directly. I would oversee the cleanliness, the quality of the contract, making sure the contract is being adhered to, and making sure that any complaints that come from the district that come through me are filtered through the proper channels.
So you would be managing the contract, basically.
Yes, ma'am. Overseeing it, making sure everything is completed based off of what we sign with them, if that's the route we decide to go.
Okay.
Would you be available to give us maybe a couple of examples of how this would benefit you as far as freeing up time?
Yeah, so I can give you one right now. The main benefit of this going contract would free up time for myself and my secretary, as we have to hunt down multiple people every week to clarify timesheets. There's people that are missing time, there's things of that nature, personnel issues, those sort of things on the administration side that we are using to hold our people accountable. That would allow me to focus in other areas of possibly saving the district money in other areas.
Can you talk about what a typical contract looks like? Is it multi-years, price guaranteed, fixed, renewals, and then contingencies? So COVID hits. I mean, that's a big expense on the janitorial side. Is that contingency where stuff is passed on to us or picked up by both, or how's that work?
We're pretty, so typically our contracts are 3 years. We have some that are longer, some that are less. A lot of the school districts will do a 1 year where they'll come back and we can talk about budgets. The only typical area a lot of times we can hold price firm for 2 to 3 years. It just comes down to wages. As you know, the wages have changed drastically in the last few years, and different markets have been hit harder than others. So for the wages, we want to be a good partner with you guys. If we're having a lot of attrition with those wages or something, we're going to provide you with that data and say, look, it usually never exceeds 3% as far as an increase goes, but we may need a percent increase here that we're going to apply to wages. During COVID, we had customers, I believe most of our education customers, we downsized on staff. We had a customer like Texas Instruments where they continued running the entire time and they needed us to add in disinfectant techs. So we added in positions on top of what their base crew was. So as those challenges come forward, we want to be a good partner with the district. We're not going to hold you to a specific contract if things change and we're going to downsize our staff by 25, 30%, then we'll want to be fair about that. Well, the price is going to reflect that. So I think our contracts are very short and sweet. I think they're about 9 pages in length. If you look at some of our multi-billion-dollar competitors, that might be about 50 pages. So and I think if you go back and you contact any of those references, they'll tell you the same thing as far as the partnership. BCISD, we've been in there since I believe 2016. So been through ups and downs with them over the years.
And that 3-year contract, is that at a constant rate or may it fluctuate at this point?
I think I'd have to go back and look at the numbers since we haven't got into the contracts. I think we can absolutely hold 2 years firm. I would have to talk with our CEO and kind of look at the 3 years, but I think it's possible that we could probably do that.
Sure, just wanted that, since the question was about the multi-year.
Sure.
Typically, when we do a multi-year, there's incentives in there, and one of them can be the price control. It can be a lot of it.
I will say this: our equipment, all the new technology and equipment that we put in there, we built it based on 3 years. So we amortize it over 3 years on that cost, and typically we plan to keep a customer much longer than 3 years once we get in there. So that works out well. And then we also plan to, for most of the equipment, after about 3 years, give or take, some will last less time, some will last longer, but we want to make a plan to kind of have replacements for that. And the equipment, I think I mentioned to you guys in our meeting before, we don't count our custodians to maintain that and keep that up. We have a partnership with Karcher that comes in on a quarterly basis, and they're doing preventative maintenance, making sure that all machinery is in good running and working order so that the cleaners have all the tools that they need to get things done.
Okay, one more. And then we'll be done. I promise.
Yes, ma'am.
I still think either I didn't explain it well. We are listening. Okay, 3-year contract that you offer. And then you may go on to one depending on what being written up by a supervisor, whatever those things are. But you start off with that. So your benefits and pay much more than what we get. And money talks. I mean, we know that. Money talks. So if I had to choose, I would go with I'm following the money, right? But if I'm following just the money, maybe not that. Okay, I'm gonna give you a personal thing. My mom and my dad raised 8 kids. My daddy was I thought he was a mechanic, but he wasn't. He was a workshop helper. Not making, he brought home, I think, when he passed, $50 a week. And in that money, and my mom also was a housemaid. Very prominent people here in Bay City. But did they want to give her a dollar raise? Because they decided that I want my kids to have more than what I had, was what she was sold. Now, you got all those girls, bring them to work with you and let them house people. Guess what? We didn't. With their salaries and what my mom was bringing, all but 2, the last 2, went through college. 3 of us have next, working on that salary. So I need to know, and I know you're gonna tell me you can't, but since I am so Bay City, I want to know how many of those employees that we have right now are you gonna keep? Because I've heard from them. I've had phone calls that said they don't like it. What about my job? What about my house? How am I gonna feed my family? What if we don't? Those are serious questions to me. If they're not in that bunch that you choose, and some of them at the age they've been there for so long, you know, nobody wants me anymore after 48 years of teaching as old as I am. No. But those people that works for us day in, day out, committed to us, coming to work, whether it's rain, sleet, or snow, they're there. You can whisper in my ear, you can email me, but those things I need to know. And we have, you said bringing in, what do you call it, project managers, which is the same as our head custodians. Now, you just said you will become the project manager. So that oversees them, am I correct?
No,
No,
my role would be a contract manager.
a
So
contract.
the project manager for them would in turn be a supervisor for them to cover the district,
But would be employed
but would be employed by the custodial
by
service.
y'all, okay. So there's no one in our district. The only one that you will be in contract with is
Yes,
Mr. Gusek that will be then communicating with y'all, correct? So
Yes.
all of the project managers, custodians will be all hired.
So we'll be partnering with him.
Correct.
And, you know, everything's custom made. So the employees that you're speaking of sounds like they're AHI employees already. If they're dedicated, those are the type of employees we want. And if they're as dedicated as you say, and then the job's up to them. Because it's gonna make our job much, much easier to having employees that are already dedicated and willing to do the job. And what we're gonna do is bring in streamline, and we're gonna make things more efficient. I have a director of operations, 3 area managers. They're gonna come down here and help train the new equipment with the new equipment, have daily QC reports, follow-ups with them, and you know, we dedicate ourselves to housekeeping. So we have a whole staff of management that will be teaching everybody from our project manager, our on-site project manager, on down to the porters and the custodians. And we'll make sure that everybody's trained and developed into the way we would like them to be. But if they're dedicated, every single one of them will have a job. I can guarantee that.
May I make a suggestion? The next time you present to somebody that may have somebody like me on board, start off with that tagline. Start off with that tagline that you just, and you wouldn't have had to hear my mouth at all. But start off with that tagline to assure me, of folks like me, is getting the best. And I think, like I said, I'm just one of these. So I'll probably get outvoted, but I want you to know how I feel right now about it. And you almost got me. But if you had started with that, I think I would have felt that.
And one thing about our company too, you know, we're large enough to absorb a lot of costs to bring other type of training and management, but we also tailor make each account special. You know, we look at the contract, we work with the project managers, my managers, and we custom make it to basically fit Bay City. We're not going to come in here and what's best for another account, come over here and do it for here. We're going to tailor make it to make sure that we partner with y'all. We hear, we listen, and we customize it to what's best fits you. So we're not just going to come in here and just have a cookie cutter type industry and just make it like we do everywhere else. It will be specially made for y'all.
See, now you have 2 points, so start with those, and you won't have me as, now I have to go back to you. Is Brent?
Yes,
I wanna
ma'am.
make sure I say it right. Brent, you train, right? Oversee all of our schools, everything. So now you move all of that off of your plate to give over to a company. And while you ride in a Cadillac.
No, ma'am. I wish I could ride in a Cadillac if this were to happen.
Because that's what it seemed like to me. You riding in a Cadillac, you know, and handing everything over to them. Because see, I'm going to tell you, you say you're not a project manager. You're a contractor. Okay. And you explain why. But my little pee-wee brain tell me that one of those don't need to be done. That's what my little pee-wee brain is telling me. But you make sure you pay these guys. Although they didn't start with what I said or what I was thinking. I had a whole bunch of stuff. And you narrowed it down into the last comments that you made. Back again to y'all. And I had to clarify because I think Ms. Westmoreland, Trustee Westmoreland asked for clarification. Our custodians now are mentors. Most of them, our kids that's on this campus, they don't have a father. They don't have a mom. They don't have anyone to look up to. But you know what? On that day of custodian, and I was watching throughout the district, those kids was crazy about their custodians. I need to know that y'all going to, with all of your monies that you're gonna bring to the table, with all the technology that you're gonna bring to the table, all of the training, I still need to know that my child will be loved in the same way and taken care of the same way that they're being taken care of. But you did say, and I'm hold you to it, that if they're serious about their jobs and they want to stay, you can bring it to the table, and of course they have to go through an interview process, or would it be up to you to say, hey, that girl, that lady, say lady, because you're a baby up under there, and please put a handle on it. Miss Jordan, let me tell you, I'm not talking, I'm just calling out. And she is fantastic at what she says. Mr. Chris over there is fantastic. But then that final thing you said, but Chris didn't interview with. He got in there and he started stuttering. He could not answer the question. So that's a mark out for Mr. Chris. You're not gonna be high, Chris. That's a mark out. So I need to know that you are going to talk to them about every custodian that we have.
I think that'll be a part of that ongoing process if we decide to move that way. You know, they'll have their hiring process, but they'll also, from conversations, we'll be in contact and communication with the district employees that we have and see if there's any kind of recommendation that they may want or that they need.
That they're looking for.
Yes, ma'am.
And we hadn't talked about that. We had not talked about that, but thank you for the question, because we did talk about in the RFP process of how transition works. Smooth transition to the maximum ability, reducing anxiety, to have those meetings. And I'll let y'all elaborate, but that was framed out as, here's the entry plan, here's the days, if we're so blessed to be approved, which is completely up in the air and would be on the agenda on the 15th, but no.
I did want to add a tidbit, and is my only point, because I know they've done a great job, and I know y'all had the interview, but when we first had a lot of the questions with the custodial services or the ones that were interested, Mr. Brent and the team did a phenomenal job with reassuring those vendors that our ultimate goal here is we want our staff to be part of a city. We don't want them to go anywhere. They are us, and we know what's important for the district, and we know what's needed moving forward. And so we stress to please make sure, and that's why we put it in the RFP, that we want to make sure that those staff members have that opportunity to interview and to have a possible opportunity to work with whatever vendor does take it over. So to just kind of add to the point of, it truly is, and dittoing kind of what he had said is, if they're a phenomenal worker, which we have a lot of phenomenal workers, I mean, it's just like me when I look for somebody, if they're going to show up and do the job, we want them here. And our custodians are like that. And so I feel that they're going to be very successful with our Bay City employees, knowing that they're going to show up day in and day out and do the job that is necessary to get stuff done.
And Mrs. Robinson, you don't have to take their word for it. In that 158-page proposal, and there's a bunch of phone numbers of other school districts that you can call and ask them about the onboarding
You know
process.
what, when I got past 5, I was like.
Maybe sometimes, scrolling back, scrolling back, and then the text spreads out, there's phone numbers in there.
Yeah, I'm not gonna, I would bypass the whole thing when I saw 198. You really think I'm gonna read this? This would have been much better.
Well, one thing to rest assured, you know, if we are chosen to get the contract, what we could do is once we make it official, we can actually have a town hall meeting, invite all the custodians, and we can come with my leadership, and we can actually tell them, you know, assure them that they have a job. As long as they want it, the transition will be that they come over and all they have to do is fill out their paperwork, and they have a job, and we'll, you know, they're dedicated. I mean, so that way they feel comfortable about it, because we're not wanting to turn away anyone.
Yeah, he makes a good point. That was, we transitioned into Baylor about a year and a half ago, and they had a 6-month process of that transition. And so there was a lot of chatter already out there. People were nervous about their jobs. And so we did that as well. They had a town hall. Everyone even they brought, you know, it's a welcoming meeting. They got a lot of different AHI shirts and things like that. Went ahead and gave them employee ID numbers and went through that process early to put everyone's mind at ease about their jobs. So. Yeah.
Any other questions?
How does it work during a school day? So does, like, I think right now, if a kid gets sick in a class or something, the teacher would just call down and they would send somebody over. Are they gonna have like an extra app or anything to go through to get somebody to come clean up? Or is it gonna present more burden on the teachers, or will it function basically the same way as far as the teacher sees them?
I think it'll probably function about the same way. A lot of our campuses use a radio system where teacher calls out to the office staff radios for a custodian, tell them what the issue is, tell them where the issue is at, and then they go address that issue. So it would work pretty much in the same aspect.
So they don't have to reach out to Paul or something?
No.
That's
correct.
Like Dr. Mack said, no decision there's no action tonight. This is just information and a time for us to ask questions as board members. And it will be on the agenda for the April board meeting, and we can make a decision, or we can decide to table it, but to stay in line with the dates given in the RFP and board book. That's where we're at. So, and if you have additional questions, they gave us their cards, and then like James said, that in the bottom of the document, there are a bunch of numbers. And there are letters in here and all kinds of things if you haven't gotten a chance to look through the actual document. I know it's lengthy, but there's a lot of great information. Any other questions or comments?
Would it make me real happy if y'all go by Lady Roberts Elementary and clean that yard, Mr. Brent? It needs to be more over there. I don't care if there's not anyone over there. Keep it looking good till I decide I don't want to go there.
Yes, ma'am.
That's it. Okay,
I know you're,
I'm done.
but that is a different department.
I know.
Okay, I was like, I just want to make sure that I don't want them to think, oh no, we're mowing lawns too. So I just wanted to make sure.
Did y'all call Jill, because she always thinks that she has to come behind me and correct me. No,
But I just,
I said what I wanted to say to you.
Yes,
yes,
ma'am.
but I wanted to make sure that they weren't thinking something more. All right, okay, thank y'all so much for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you for answering our questions. I know the board knows how to get in touch with you and
Okay, all right, thank you.
go from there. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Dennis, thank you again, and we'll see Carly tomorrow. As we heard, it was well executed.
You are welcome.
Thank
you. Y'all too. Thank y'all for coming.
Thank you.
Dr. Mackey will get us those numbers for comparison, just to see the difference.
Of our numbers in there?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted, I wrote that down at the top, wanted to touch back on that. Okay,
Moving to the next item, which is, will be a relatively short item. We have been, as we said when we opened up, looking for every opportunity to bolster services, to bolster efficiencies, et cetera. One of the other things that we have been exploring was an interlocal agreement for armed police services with the city of Bay City. I did receive a very kind email from their stakeholders saying that now was not the time for them. They were very gracious, very courteous in their response, and I reciprocated that because we're very much partners. And so we did put in the time, had some meetings, correspondence back and forth, which I kept y'all appraised of in the as far as the newsletter. But due to timeline, I strongly recommend that we focus on staffing the current alignment. We did give it a good, strong, honest effort, but at this point, I think from a safety standpoint, it's time. We've got some open positions, and so they're covered at an expense, because if you're going to have someone come in and sub, it's going to cost more because they're not a full-time employee with benefits. So my recommendation would be that we pivot immediately in order not to compromise safety. And of course, that's not an action item either. You guys can get back to me at any time. Any other questions or follow-up on that? Okay. Moving right along to the one yes,
do we need that to be an action item at the April board meeting? Okay, I just wanted to make sure that this,
We're just staying at her.
we're just
Yes,
saying.
yes.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure
So
to
that's,
clarify that
we
question.
would, in that case, we would bring the full proposal. And so a good example will be this next one of how it, so we just got done talking about RFP. This one is going to be similar interlocal agreement type of, well, it's the same one. So you'll see in here where we are in the process because it's further along, and I'm very excited to report on that. So just a background, early this year, and we covered this in our summit, our Community Leaders and Business Partner Summit. We've launched a pre-K partner program here locally, focused on early literacy, early childhood literacy. And so we opened that up. We currently have 2 partners, and we have at least 1, maybe 2 here in Matagorda County that want to partner with us as well. However, word got out that we had embarked on this innovative approach to pre-K partnerships. So word got out to, and where we are, I won't go into too many names right now. I don't want to. We're in the process. We've had all the meetings. There was a negotiation point, which came out our way. So they had proposed a 10% ADA, and I'll get into all that. We asked for 15, and they took the 15. They were amenable to every request we made. So there's no agreement, there's no commitment tonight, there's 0 that. All I can tell you is it's very encouraging. They balked at 0% of the things that we wanted out of the agreement. So let's talk about what that new agreement, how it would differentiate from the innovation that we implemented in community partnerships with our daycares. We're much more hands-on in our local community. So kudos to Mrs. Howard. over at Cherry Elementary and her team, Ms. Espenbaum, they're much more hands-on with our local partners. They're visiting campuses. Training is open, and I've got several people here. This isn't an RFP process, so I'll name some names as we go here. Elizabeth Rollins has been instrumental. Vince has been a part of this. Douglas, Mr. Townsend. So we have a lot of people in the room for follow-up, and I always encourage jump in where you will. And so this has been a lengthy process to implement local pre-K partners. So those are up and running. Word gets out to a group, and they are working with the governor and the commissioner of education, and they're very large. They're incredibly large. I've shared that before. So as far as their partnership, how does it differentiate? Well, our first question is, we can't send Ms. Howard all over Texas. What does that look like? So essentially, this 15% ADA deal that has no cap and no legal restrictions that we can find so far, no cap, all benefit, and we'll get into some of the benefits there. We currently do not have, and we have kicked the tires on. Dr. Pronto couldn't be here tonight with special education to bilingual education. The main thing we wanted, because there has been some nasty articles about some other of these partnerships have done it, that it's an only take the money and run type of deal. That's the honest truth. I'm not going to name districts, but the articles are out there. How does that differentiate? This large management company will handle all those pieces. So it's not anything less than a total commitment. And like I said, both the governor and the commissioner of education are involved in these conversations with this large partner. And so they are very motivated to start an agreement. They wanted to start this year, but we're almost to our last 6 weeks and we want it to be successful. They're very motivated. Back to legislation. All indicators are that it will only get more beneficial to the district. There's no indication that it's going to get minimized in any way. The governor is behind this because of the cost of daycare, the importance of early childhood education, and because, and Mr. Townsend, you were there, they heard about us. We didn't seek them out. They said, we heard you guys are already doing this, and we'd like to offer you every opportunity. When I say every opportunity, and there's no cap, there's no cap. I mean, you could go from, what next did we have to be careful for? Well, you get a mid-size allotment, right, Vince? And according to the legislation, the mid-size allotment calculations are set to change, it appears. And so one of the things you could do is, well, how much revenue am I bringing in here? And does it move me out of the mid-size school district allotment? So we're watching those numbers as well. So the proposal that we would bring, once the legal, we're going to bring you a proposal for sure, unless there's a last minute legal snafu, something that we didn't anticipate. Something for you to consider is, I will say, very doable, an increase of $1 million. Increase of $1 million, and that was our starting point. That's innovation. That's above and beyond. That's high level. So we don't have the proposal yet, so there's a lot more details that are coming, but I can't tell you we kick the tires on special programs or we exposing the district. Bilingual education. Are these children served completely? Not only are they served, this very large entity is already doing it. They're working with charter schools. However, charter schools have a cap. Don't have a cap. I think at a minimum, we're blessed that they came to us. I think at a minimum. And we'll see what y'all think, but $1 million support. So that said, with $1 million for, well, what does it cost us to run? Current staff. Increase by $1 million, current staff. On a score from 1 to 100, Mr. Townsend, how important is teams in this for the district? It's 100. It's not a 99. It's a critical position in which only the most highly qualified person can run that. Would you be stressed if you didn't have the person you brought on? 100 employee appreciation. It would, we feel that person could run it and bring $1 million. When they hit the million, I don't know if it was 800,000 events or $1 million, they did add one person. But if you have $1 million coming in and children are being helped, families are be able to pay for daycare, I don't see a loser in it. And I think it's a wonderful opportunity. Hopefully everything will clear. And again, they don't want to talk. We told them, well, what if the board wants to kick the tires on this for 1 year? They said, we'll do it, but we want a budget. And so, very motivated, has to clear some hurdles. Very encouraging news. And that's encouraging for everyone in the district, every employee. We all want to be able to bring pay raises. We can target that money, we can set that money aside and still launch the easement plan on M&O and get more cleared up, and we can run it as long as we can run it. There is a precedent there. They're already doing this. They're doing $1 million in business with one staff member. However, they went to 2 at that point. I don't know, it was 800,000 or $1 million. Essentially, and let me clarify that point, although we're not responsible for IEPs and bilingual testing and that, the highly qualified person that we hired is in charge of making sure of state compliance. You don't want to mess that up. And so we're confident that we can handle the state compliance. We're confident that it is a huge win for the district if everything measures up. And so I'm just so proud to be able to tell you that is some good news, and hopefully it'll all work out. But any questions or anything you need from me, it is in the hands of legal. Just we have, as far as all the particulars, we've agreed on all of it. Now it's just, as we said earlier, I think Priscilla had asked a question. You know, in the contract, you'll have your exit plans and all that in your interlocal agreement. However, they're already in there, and we like them. But our attorneys are going to look at them and say, you should like them or not. So that's what.
The students we serve are part of our enrollment now.
Yes, sir.
But that doesn't affect our 4A status because that's based on high school size.
Correct.
I thought so.
That's correct. And that's one of the million mitigating factors that we have to kick the tires on unintended consequences. We just don't want to miss anything.
Coach Jones will kill us.
Yeah. Oh, and that's a great point, because you could easily move out of your mid-size allotment with your eyes closed. However, it's more lucrative to do that. And again, we won't know that till we run the numbers on the potential new mid-size allotment numbers, because they have. And I'm sorry, but even the formula that's changing is not substantial. If, as Ben said earlier, if you run that number out there and you use the number that the state gets, it's a big number, but go ahead and divide that out by 1,400 districts, and it's just not as substantial.
You said that legal has the agreement. What is the timeline on that? Have they given you?
It's a back and forth. And so when I first submitted it, they had a couple questions. And so currently I don't have any questions in my inbox right now. But we did the same work with our Skyward contract. We did the same work with some TJICs. And so it wasn't overly lengthy because there's some certain things, and the fact that this group, this is a legal agreement that they have with many entities. And so the only thing we changed is a higher percentage of yield for us. And I can't think of any other major change, just clarification of responsibilities so that we're not putting the district on the hook for special education accommodations, IEPs, bilingual testing. The PEAMS person would be involved in registration because they have to qualify. And it's hopefully if we find all day pre-K at the state level, that just that's on. It's on board to go all day. Fun, you don't have to fund. You have to provide it or offer it, but it's not funded as a whole day. And so if that passes, 1 million turns.
So once we get it back from legal, is it, you present it to the board, we take a look at it, we read the stuff, ask the questions, and then it moves forward. So are you talking, this will start in August? Are you talking dependent upon, is it a school year to school year, or is it the middle of the year? Is there a certain start time, or can it start at any point?
It can start at any point, it's just so large, we don't want to start, the 6 weeks ends Friday. But definitely, they are gonna push in every way to start next year. They want to start this year. And so again, has to clear all the hurdles, but absolutely, we would be looking at all this.
Okay. Are there any other questions? I know more is to come on this. Any other questions at this time?
Okay, next item is a program review, and we provided some information further down in the document. We may not get thoroughly to tonight, but you do have it. But we had this conversation about efficiency within programs, especially efficiency within programs that are not a detriment to students. And so I just have to compliment Principal Mosier-Forrest as well as Mr. Townsend for bringing this forward. Mr. Townsend, appreciate it. Principal Mosier-Forrest there's a lot of information here. And so at this time, I'll turn it over to your thoughts on early college, high school, dual credit reimbursement incentive and how that looks and may benefit the district.
Sure. Do they have access to the live agenda?
I did it. If they have it on their device, I think I should.
The 358-page document? No.
Give me 1 second. I'll double check.
Scroll and try to get to the end. And if they don't, that's okay. I just for my information as I talk to them. So one of the things that we're doing, we've been doing it for several years, is making sure that we're efficient in the programs that we're running. And so one of the allotments that we get is college, career, military readiness outcomes bonus allotment. And that's earned by students earning CCMR, but it's a certain percentage threshold for economically disadvantaged, non-economically disadvantaged, and special education students. And then if you get above that threshold, then for the number of students that is, you receive a certain amount of money based on what their indicator is. So, economically disadvantaged students above that threshold will get a certain amount, non-economic and special education. That all comes together to give you your outcomes bonus, and that's given to you in allotment. So that has been what has been funding our two big things, and what got us down this road to see we're actually spending more than what the allotment is bringing in, and so that's coming out of local. And so there are two big things. Number one was $30,000 is being spent each year budgeted on dual credit student incentives. And what that is if students taking dual credit, they make an A. At the end of that semester, they can fill out a form, verify that they made the A, they turn it in, and they get a specific, maybe $100 because they made an A. They made a B, then they get, so it's to help reimburse the cost of the dual credit based on their performance, okay? That's really not a necessary thing, and honestly, when you look at it, it's not an allowable expense.
So that's coming out of M&O.
So,
yes. Okay,
yes.
just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, and so one of the things I want to tell you is that we generated an outcomes bonus last year. We received $61,000, okay? We were spending $30,000 on the reimbursement, but then for the early college, high school, we're spending $105,000. So you combine those two, and we've got a shortfall that's coming out of the local budget of $74,000. And so really the CCMR outcomes bonus, the intention of that is to increase the number of students that earn a CCMR point, not to focus on students that already have a point, but to get more students to earn a point, whether it's through CTE or college readiness, so TSI or dual credit, any of those things. And so what we noticed is that the way this was framed out initially when the early college high school was started and this this incentive was not necessarily aimed at that because you're focusing on kids that already earned the point, but that's not what the money's for. If we're continuously giving money to kids who are earning a point through dual credit, then the money is not going to help more kids earn a point. Same thing with the early college high school. If we're funding the early college high school and those students have already earned a point, we're pouring money into the same thing. It's not going to where it's supposed to go. So the reimbursement piece, that's a no-brainer because number one, it's not even allowed. That's not even part of it. So that's got to So once we get to the end of this year, we wanted to honor what we told the kids. But once we get to the end of this year, that won't take place anymore. But one of the other things, when I came on board in the early college high school, I had a hard time understanding what the benefit of that title was. Because Bay City High School had already started down that road, I know when I left initially, of bolstering their dual credit. And so really, when you think about it, when early college high school came into to existence here at Bay City, all of the structures that are in place that completed the students being able to earn an associate's or a core complete degree, those weren't necessarily in place. And that early college high school, the title of it provided a structure and a framework to be able to build that out. In addition to the grants that were received, dual credit expansion grants that funded our staff who wanted to go back and get their masters to be able to become the professors on campus. And so through all of those things, now we have those systems in place. So what we're doing essentially now is we're still pouring money into that early college high school when the system is there and it's in place. So it's almost like I went and I bought a car and I paid for it, and I'm continuing to pay for it over and over and over. The car's still there, whether, you know, it's still there. And so if we don't have a designation of early college high school, you still get to earn your associates. Those classes don't go away. You still get to earn your core complete. All of those supports are there. And so that took us down the road of looking at what would that transition look like. The other piece is, and Ms. Mosier will share this with you, when we have a coach that each year we have to apply and do a lengthy application process for all early college high school. And one of its main focuses is that just because you apply to be a member of the early college high school doesn't mean that you're going to get it. And it's based on a lottery. And the requirements of early college high school is that you really are supposed to have a large focus and membership of economically disadvantaged and other populations. And so you have to stack those lottery chances, because if you don't have those students, that certain percentage in there, and that percentage is not earning that through the early college high school, then you can lose your designation. Ms. Mosier, do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. So one of the things to share that you may or may not have access to right now is we started tracking the number of students that were in dual credit, as well as the number of credits that have been earned by our students over the course of probably the last 7 years. When we started, as Mr. Townsend said, actually when I started at Bay City High School as a teacher 11 years ago, I proctored a class because I didn't have my master's in English. It was in administration. So we had adjuncts that would come a few days a week. They were not our staff members. A lot of students were reluctant to have somebody that was an instructor in that capacity. And then also so many of the classes that were available to them were online only. We had very few of our students who were successful. They probably had to have all the built-in supports at home in order to be successful. So we had some things that were in place that allowed us to look in the direction of early college where there might be a framework that we could utilize to rebuild a system at Bay City High School that would help us perpetuate more. We also benefited early on from the CCMR outcomes-based bonus. We got a wealth of funding at the time because it was new, and we had some systems that were in place through AVID, as well as through establishing our own TSI testing center, where we could get quite a few of those certifications, and we returned our money pretty fast. But then the money that we were investing was into the same students that earned us the money to begin with, and they weren't earning us more money. So we have significantly reduced the amount of the bonus that we were receiving, but we were putting, as Mr. Townsend said, to the same students that had already earned it, instead of to students that we could be targeting. And then with some of those things, like our dual credit expansion program, we also made it more attractive to take a dual credit class while you're in high school, and you have a face-to-face teacher that's the same teacher you took for maybe 9th grade English, and now is teaching you senior English. We really have a lot of buy-in from our students and from our faculty of just what that relationship looks like. So as of right now, we have 99 seniors who are enrolled in dual credit, whereas in 2018 we had 51 of the senior class. And of those 99 right now, we have 19 early college students. It happens to be a larger of the cohort, and we have a little bit more money at the time. The number of credit hours earned by the end of this school year will be 3,436, and only 324 of those will come from early college. So it's not early college that grew our dual credit. It's the other systems that we put in place, some of which we borrowed from early college, that helped us learn better about what it meant to offer those systems within our master schedule, the structures of tutoring programs, the course sequences that were better aligned, and then of course the recruitment of our staff. So when we talk about what does early college make us meet, we're not attracting the same kind of students that we really initially wanted in a dual credit program. We want students that actually are, willing and supported. With the lottery system, you have to give chances to kids that may meet one or two criteria in order to meet then the designation. But where we are right now is we're at risk of losing our designation because of the few number of students that meet the at-risk criteria. What happens is we get those kids in, they never pass their TSI, so they don't start on the college coursework. And then they don't complete what is required to show that we are successful as an early college. We've given as many chances as we can to things like the TSI to increase them getting in because they've done what it takes to really be successful in dual credit, which is to demonstrate the ability to handle that coursework academically, but with supports that are in place. And the more that we've provided the additional supports for TSI, the more success we've had just for all students in general to be successful in dual credit classes. So one of the things I shared with Mr. Townsend at the time was, we were looking for some funds. We were looking at how we add a few more testing units for TSI. Where was the funding for that at the time? How do we think about, we might have some additional instructional materials that we need for our dual credit classes. Where's the funding for that? Well, the funding that was for that was constrained for us because it was no longer as available as it used to be, and it would be, we're gonna have to take that out of the local budget if we purchase that because all these other things are already coming from the allotment and we're overspending from the allotment. To share a little bit more about the other things that early college requires us to do, of course, is we have to have all of the kids who are in those courses take a study class, which means we have to have it in AVID, because that's the study class that we already have in place. So we have a great AVID program. It starts at junior high on Rosie's campus, and we have some great teachers in that program, but the target population for those students is not the same as students who just might randomly get picked in a lottery. And then some of the students who were applying for early college say, I don't want to be in that class, but it's required as part of early college. So by removing the early college title per se, we don't have to require that for every kid who wants to take dual credit classes. And we allow any of our kids to take dual credit classes anyway, but we also open up a little bit more flexibility in our master schedule. The early college cohorts put a huge hindrance on our master schedule at the high school. We doubled the enrollment because you never know if the kids that are in the lottery are already gonna be in AVID. And as of this year, of the 31 that applied, 19 of them were not already in AVID. So had they randomly got selected in the lottery, we would be adding an entire extra section of AVID every year along the way. We already have a cohort now that has a significant number of kids that were not in AVID, and we were gonna have to add a third section of AVID too, because it is very hard to recruit the tutors, and we have to meet a student to teacher or student to tutor ratio. So we were gonna have to hire additional tutors as well. Right now, it's perfect that you only have 8 sections of AVID, and the tutors can go through the entire instructional day. But if you had a 9th section, then they would go on top of another section, and you would have to hire a whole nother group of tutors just for that one period, but we pay our tutors hourly. So the situation that we're in right now, when we go back and look at it, when we think about what was the purpose of AVID in the first place, so the purpose of AVID was to help all of our students that don't have those built-in supports at home to have the study skills and the training and the expertise of some of our teachers for good instructional strategies, note-taking, maybe a little bit of autonomy for the independence of learning for a few of the classes that are still online, but to have a support system in place where there actually is studying that happens in the classroom instead of leaving it up to whether or not the kid does the assignments. Those are the things that we want to continue to focus on with the right intent, and instead of dumping early college kids into an AVID program that has been really successful and deteriorating the success of an AVID program, we want to maintain what the intent of what that program was to begin with. Our AVID program, and I did link for you guys a graphic that shows a triangle on there. Our AVID program, it's just really aligned with what BCISD already talks about. So everything that we've done, if you even go back to all the way when we used to be a Capturing Kids Heart School District, everything was rooted in building a rapport with students and a relational capacity. So the idea is to think about what do kids need, and as educators, what do we provide to them? And I feel like that what we have in our dual credit program, with some supports through AVID, we have educators who are already our employees that know what our kids need because they live in this community, they build relational capacity with them, and they reach out and build a relationship with all of the stakeholders as well. So we're building student agency. They know how to then advocate for themselves. We have all of our AVID students on, and I know Rosie, they take them on field trips at the junior high to kind of start their interest in colleges. But by the time they're seniors, every one of them is accepted to a four-year university. But we want to build that culture for all students. And so we want to keep sustaining work like the AVID things that we're doing that are campus-wide instructional strategies instead of just limiting it to a few students that are within a cohort, and then creating, you know, just the schedule conflicts. I know that there are, you know, many students that want to apply and get those dual classes, but then it's like, well, it's only offered this period. And if I take this class, then I can't be in Aristocats or I can't be in athletics. And it just creates so many of those conflicts because of the constraints of the early college program and the sequence that it has to be offered. It gives us more flexibility if we have more of a campus-based program.
I think I follow along. We're proposing removing the early college high school label.
So yes, at this time, what we're saying is that we're paying for something that is not sustainable. One, when we think about this, the constraints that are on the local budget, because we're not getting the original money that we have for it.
Okay.
So we got a big lump sum at the very beginning of our push for CCMR, and now we're just kind of sustaining around $60,000 a year.
But anybody in it already is gonna run through it.
Yes.
What about the incoming eighth, ninth graders, the eighth graders now? Has that cohort been selected and are they gonna?
It has not.
Okay, are we proposing that we stop it now or run this last cohort?
So what we have done is we communicated with all of the applicants. The 31 applicants received information regarding the Educational Foundation's scholarship.
Right.
It is the only one that provides a scholarship to eighth graders. So we shared with them that the shift in our focus was for us to promote all students having access to dual credit if they want. Instead of picking a few kids out of the 31, we would really, you know, make intentional work with their counselor as well as with their parents to help them figure out what would be feasible for them. They might not want to start at their freshman year. They might want to wait till their sophomore year. So we are proposing, and we have looked at as a campus team, really, and the other thing Mr. Townsend did talk about that is required to early college, we must pay for their tuition and we must pay for their textbooks. The textbooks have been an outrageous cost. And we have paid almost more for textbooks than we have for tuition. And when we think about just the fact that it's constant, here's another cohort, and then they're all brand new textbooks, and now we gotta buy them all over again. It's just so frustrating when you think about the instructional resources that we provide to every other general ed student last us almost 10 years. And we don't get to replace those, but on any given year, we're exceeding, and Mr. Townsend can tell me if I misspeak, but by semesters, I mean, I know this is gonna sound crazy, but with even a small cohort, upwards of $30,000 a semester for textbooks.
We budgeted 25,000 because got up to 25,000 the year before. 25,000 wasn't enough, so we had to seek more, and they had to use Education Foundation money to supplement. It was a grant that they had received to be able to cover that.
So the document that Dr. Mack sent to our emails has all of this information and answers a lot of these questions. One of the questions that I do have that's not covered in here is, I know a couple years ago, James and Trent, Mark and Priscilla, y'all may be able to remember the actual time frame. It was shortly after I got on the board. It was proposed to the board that we get rid of AP classes and go strictly to dual. And do the reimbursement. Because we have a lot of students that cannot afford to do the full tuition. I know we've negotiated that rate with WCJC. I know there are different, now that I have high school students and I have learned about this, I know there are different other reasons for AP and dual. As far as GPA goes, it gives you a bump, that type of thing. So the only way for our students to earn that bump in their GPA is by dual classes at this point. So is there a conversation to talk about AP classes to bring those back if we're talking about taking away the 30,000 to help those students that aren't able to? I know there are a lot of scholarships and such.
I would love to share that. So, we have a couple of existing AP courses, and the reason for that is that we don't offer them as dual classes right now. So where we are is if we offer it as dual, we don't offer it as AP, and there's a reason for that. One, the success rate for students is very slim. So I used to teach AP English Language and Comp as well as AP English Literature. With the work that we have for students, I will tell you that AP Spanish is phenomenal, but they are native speakers.
Correct.
And they earn their college credit almost 80 to 100% of them every single year. The national average for the other subject areas is significantly lower than 50%. In fact, it's more around 20% of students that would earn that college credit. So where we move away from that is more of a guaranteed college credit. We have a relationship with WCJC where they significantly lower their tuition. So it is much more feasible for a student to be able to take a college level course. And as Ms. Westmoreland mentioned, there are a number of service organizations in our community as well as the Educational Foundation that offer grants. I will tell you that our counseling team is not aware of a single student who did not receive a grant if they applied for it. So the only real hindrance would be actually get the form and fill it out, because there are some organizations that come and tell us we don't have enough applicants. We have more money than this, but there's not enough students who are applying for it. Can you get a few more to turn in the application? That's why we really promoted it for the 8th graders, because we know we support the Educational Foundation and all of the fundraisers and things that are going on within the district, but they have continued to flip and support us. And they're the best example of us knowing that every student who completed that application was awarded a scholarship. So just to speak a little bit on those students, I still believe from all of the students and from knowing which of these students are taking dual classes, they're not our most affluent students, but they filled out a scholarship, and the majority, if not 100% of their college coursework has been funded through scholarships. So it's definitely wise on our part to encourage them, and that's where we shared in the newsletter that we shared with the 31 applicants. Our shift would be, if you have any questions on how to get funded, rather than thinking about would I have won the lottery to be one of the few kids who was selected, we would rather all of you just come and ask, how can I get that scholarship application?
Yes, I completely agree with that. I do think there are lots of opportunities for kids to have the option to use the scholarship. The one question that keeps coming to mind, and I have been asked several times by community members, is are we pushing students that aren't ready for dual, whether they pass the TSI or not, into a dual class that maybe aren't there maturity wise, but have the ability to do the TSI? And is there another route for those students to earn the one point for their GPA, which would be through that AP class, and we've taken that away? So I don't know.
So actually, AP classes have significantly more rigor, and they are much more difficult for students to be successful in. So that misconception of I can take an AP class instead of a dual, our dual comes from a community college. And the community college is a much more accessible level of rigor for all students. Whereas AP, when you think about it, if you pass an AP test, they're supposed to take it at Yale. So the threshold of whether or not they would be successful in there is set significantly higher.
Something to consider real quick, something to consider there is you don't want to create a culture of chasing GPA. Rigor only counts if you pass the course.
Absolutely.
Because let's talk about teacher training. Teachers in a dual credit situation have to have a master's degree in the content area. You go to a training for AP. So much is dependent on the teacher, and I don't have any experience here in the district. I'm talking about my former experience. So what we looked at was GPA points are awarded for true rigor. So if you pass the test, which I've seen very low, incredibly low pass rates. So the only benefit is GPA points. And I caution against that because you've got a more qualified, highly qualified teacher, generally speaking, not always. It's, as you said, guaranteed credit versus the risk of passing in tests that very rarely is passed. But it is a conversation that I've had many times, and you can really damage CCMR by having AP and dual credit compete. And I run a hybrid, depending on the college. Some colleges, the one I worked with in the past, they would allow you to dual enroll.
So
And
ours
that was
does
a
not.
catastrophe.
Yeah, ours does not. And just something to share specifically about that when we asked, the reason I'm not considering it and the reason we moved away from it in the past was the significant constraints on the master schedule. So you might have 3 students who would sign up for the AP course and have to put an entire section of it on the master schedule. And then your regular ed classes would end up with 35 kids because you were making an exception for other students to have a smaller number in one section. I do have to train them, send them to, training, which is an additional expense, but then also they have to have it ongoing. Some new things that are kind of some of the expectations also between dual versus AP. They don't tolerate the co-seating part of it because it's completely different syllabi. So there are completely different criteria, which also does not align with our STAR testing. So for the lower grade levels and for some of the content exams, just for example, for US history, Mr. Driver was so stressed this week. He got picked for jury. Oh, not picked, sorry, he got summoned for jury. And there were 4 of our teachers summoned. And this is 2 weeks before his STAR test in US history. He did not start the US history content until mid-year. So the content that's on the STAR test, he started in January. So I said, how did you get out of it? He said, I went to the judge and I said, it's 2 weeks till the STAR test and I'm only in the 60s. And they let him out. Yeah. But to be honest, his is a good example of how there's at least some of the same material. That is not necessarily true for all of the courses. And so when we think about the vertical alignment across the coursework and the work that we've done in the district for curriculum mapping, those AP courses, again, because they are not really rooted in the same type of level rigor, they're way above where some of the other things are. What's unique about the dual credit existing program that we have right now, we can actually have students sitting in 1301 and 1302 composition courses for dual credit, and they are doing the exact same thing and well above, and then far exceeding and meeting the meets and masters level, because we have Ms. Morrison teaching that class, but she also is the teacher of the general ed English 2 course, and all of the curriculum is aligned with the flexibility to be able to do that. So just to share a little bit about how that would also put some constraints on our master schedule, we were able to do some strategic staffing when we eliminated some of those additional courses that truly we didn't have the enrollment to sustain.
Thank you.
Yes.
There are just lots of questions. I've gotten
No, and
questions
I'm
over the years about.
I appreciate the
versus
questions,
school,
yes.
and so that's the intent.
And some people do, they ask those things thinking, what happened to AP?
Yeah, and I get that often. I'm like, well, that's it. So here's an opportunity. Real quick, I just want to remind everyone that we have a hard stop at 7, and that's 12 minutes away. So Dr. Mack, was there anything else? I know there are some things that are in here.
A super important one and please see this as custom. We talked about the RFP, the timeline, getting that from me. It's all about hustling. It's not trying to rush. This one here, we talked. I cannot stress enough the uncertainty in funding calculations for predictions. But I would feel you guys are very well aware of this. Staffing special education has almost become exclusively, and I can show you. I received a text asking me if I wanted to sign up with them. If you have a special ed certification, these organizations, these private companies, these contracted services reach out and they contract with special ed folks. And so it's a huge competition. As we said earlier, and Priscilla shared to you about the value of people we know and keeping people we know. I would recommend that we, on this, because it is the contracted services, we'll get you the numbers. The contracted services is costing us so much, it's inhibiting other M&L projects and other expenses. And so we feel that this specific area, and again, I apologize that Dr. Pronto would be here, but the SLPA and Chris Townsend is here. We met with Dr. Pronto today. Jordan was here as well. It's beyond high need. We have some qualified people in district that are being recruited out. And again, we said, well, what about every position? Well, this is a position, and of course, a full compensation plan will come later. I mean, that's all still on board, but we are on a serious high need when it comes to the amount it's costing us for contracted service for special education services. You think about SLP, you think about speech services in general. The majority of your kids are going to take it if they don't, students that don't go to school here, we serve. And so it's a high need area. And all we're saying is, not to surprise you, we would like, not that it's obtuse, to bring those numbers to you this month and say, here's the exact problem by the numbers. Here's the data from neighboring school districts, TASB study as well. TASB has a sheet, and what I always tell Jordan, as long as you're using that sheet and following their formulas, that's the way to do it. And so if you want to talk a little bit about the TASB study, I mean, just whatever, you mentioned it today, whatever you're comfortable with that we may bring.
Yes. So I had brought that to Dr. Mack's attention and the team today. I shared with them just some concerns that I have in regards to special education and staff in special education. The other day that Mr. Vince and myself met with Dr. Pronto in regards to the budget as a whole. Like Dr. Mack had mentioned, we do plan to bring y'all a dollar amount. Just off the top of my head, I do know it's a significant dollar amount. When I spoke with Dr. Mack and the team, I shared that when you look at our staffing allocations, we're spot on. But when you look at the contracted services, that's what really adds additional costs to that budget. And after sitting down with Mr. Vince and Dr. Pronto and actually analyzing that budget based off of just personnel, not anything else having to do with special programs, it's a large number. And what I finally kind of realized is there's additional staff that are being pulled out of that funding that are contracted services that are not part of our allocations. And that's what's really hitting that budget and hitting the deficit larger and larger each year. So my proposal to the team was, could we sit and analyze a new TASB study or a TASB pay plan or compensation plan that could really target us, our special programs, to compensate them employees to come and work for us full-time, be full-time employees, benefits, time off, leave, TRS, everything that is part of a compensation plan to really staff them competitively instead of them going to these other areas and instead of Dr. P's department having to staff people through contracted services, proctors, things that are kind of out of our hands because of the services that she needs for those IEPs to meet the students' needs. Because once she gets into an IEP, and again, it's not my lingo all the time, so if I'm saying it wrong, but once she gets in there, if she has to have somebody there to provide the services, if we don't provide it, then we also get into a legal battle of not providing those services to those students. So that's what's really eating a lot of our personnel budget costs whenever it comes to special education.
And we're in the recruiting season, and we've got some folks that every indication is from the formula-based study, we're at a disadvantage and we should address it based on the statistics that it's one of our highest needed services in special education, and it's costing us a ton of money. It's really a point.
So two things. The ask is for us to look at the special ed compensation plan, just to make sure I'm understanding correctly. And then secondly, when will y'all be presenting the numbers, the plan, all of that to the board? Is this in the budget, with the budget season? Is it approved with the budget? What is the?
So the thought there is, because we can't, and again, I just can't just caution any thoughts of a compensation plan district-wide. It was said earlier, is it 700? Yeah, 725 divided out is not enough for teacher raises. So we want to look at that number. We want to look at our 88. We want to look at this new allotment to get the full plan. This is a alteration, but essentially, and I want to add compensation plan currently, Mr. Townsend, correct me, for SLPA.
Yes.
So Please
So
believe
very
me,
specific.
yes, we would want to bring you diagnostician if that,
Correct.
it's all database. We would not try to rush this, but it's completely database. And it is something that we need to act on sooner than later. And so yes, it would be very specialized to that area, just to get us going. And I will admit the legislators are moving a little faster than my 30 years that I've ever seen. So hopefully they'll get something to us. So we have those numbers and we can respect y'all's time as well as the team. And we got the numbers, we go for a full compensation plan. But the news is good. I mean, remember the last session, they floated out a lot of those big numbers and did nothing. And so all of the energy is looking good, but it would be a good one. That's okay.
Okay, so it would be during budget,
Yes,
when
ma'am.
we pass the budget.
No,
Or, I'm sorry,
sorry,
but,
that's fine.
I meant to say,
This
yes,
would
that
be-
I'll have the numbers for y'all, but
In
whatever is,
Yes.
Like in
Yes,
our
ma'am.
next board meeting next week.
yes, so
Okay.
we actually, Jordan already has the numbers, so we can share the numbers
Okay, that
right
was
away
my
of where we are
clarification.
by formula, by comparison.
Okay.
And then we'll do the same thing again for everyone, it's just we'll have more data. So yes, that would be it.
Okay,
Okay. I guess I have a question. When we have someone that's qualified to do the same work that you are contracting out of, why weren't they being paid the same as a contractor?
so that's essentially why we're analyzing everything is, the issue is those contracted services are paying a very large dollar amount. What happens is Dr. P will go out and recruit somebody to come in and do a contract. That contracted services will say, this is just an example, we're gonna pay you $50 an hour to have that person come in, contract for you. But that contracted services may only pay that SLPA, SLP $20 to be there, because they have to make something off of that fee or that contracting or having that employee there to staff that district. And so that's where it's costing us as a district a lot more money outsourced than in-house to be able to staff that employee.
That's huge, Jordan, that's huge. So you see the big number, but, and Dr. Prontos says, I wish I could consult with every educator in Texas and tell them, yeah, but look at your cut compared to the cut that the business gets, because they don't do it for free. So that's a great question, but the numbers are a little different in that they have to experience it to fully understand that it is all beneficial.
I guess then this brings me to my last one. Then if these people that are leaving our district to go to another district that is paying them way more money than y'all were not willing to give, but they were good enough to step in when that position didn't have that person. Say that I was doing it and I became whatever, and I left. But then you pull from a pool of people that's qualified to sit there and take over. But when the hiring thing comes in, then they're not being considered. So they're leaving us to go somewhere else to be appreciated. If we have people that's already certified as a, what is that, licensed, whatever, a counselor, but also do the testing. That person shouldn't have to leave BCISD when that person was good enough to stay in that place and make it through the year. But when they applied for that position, they were not all of a sudden.
I'd like to offer some support.
One more question. And then, see, when you open that door, I am going to stand in. Okay, that's not only special ed. When you send out your job openings for jobs, a position, if we have someone that is qualified to do that job, but yet you go back to that little formula thing that you're talking about, the formulas that match, but you were willing to pay someone else to come aboard and you don't know nothing about it, but you do know this person. So I'm confused with the contracting. You can already tell me, I don't think it's fair for the people that works out in our district and you go out and consult someone else when those people are good enough to work for us. And special ed has always been an area of need. Ask me how I know it, because I taught that for 17 years. And I love it. There's nothing you can tell me about special ed that I don't love about it. But it was still back then the way it is now. The only way that I got any recognition is because of my big mouth, and I wasn't gonna be looked over when I'm already doing something. I'm already doing that same work that someone else is doing. But on the job application, you offer this amount, which I'm coming in to apply, and all of a sudden, well, you have to take that pay. That's what you were hiring. No, if I'm reapplying for that position, I'm qualified to do it. All of a sudden, I'm not qualified and don't get the monies. So when you're talking about contract versus what we have already in the district, people that are performing jobs, as much like what you're asking them to cover until you find someone. I think that's a slap in any employee that we have in the face. And I agree, I get you, I know what you're saying, but if that was ever told to me, just like Jessica's over there taking notes, I will light up basic with every news, every social, everything, because that is not fair. That I am here and I'm willing to do this, but yet it's still, but you can come in with the salary that I've already offered. No, if you're offering this person 64,000 and I'm only making 34,000, but I can't get that 64 because I'm already in the district, that is something that I think that your team and whomever that y'all talk, that needs to be a conversation. That needs to be, and keep our people here versus contracted work. They're coming from some other district. And they're making twice as much that I am here covered. You see what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
What I would ask for, I'd caution against, because we're in a recruiting session during this meeting.
Okay, so
What
I
I
can
would say-
tell that
what I would say-
person, go apply.
What I would say is hypotheticals and HR is so dangerous. We follow hiring guidelines. The best person always gets the job. And if that doesn't happen, we encourage people to seek legal retribution. The reason why is because we do it right. And for hypotheticals to come that way, I would say, please send me the name, not here, but if you would please send me the names. I'll definitely look into it. But I feel like we're going into an area here that I'm not.
And I would be more than happy to send them to you
Okay.
and send them to Joy.
Okay.
Because
Yes, ma'am.
I see it, I know it, I've heard it, and it's more than one time.
Yes, ma'am.
So we have to fix it.
All right, out of respect to people's time, it is 7:03. Are there any other questions, Dr. Mack, any final closing comments? Board, any questions that you want to go? I know there was a lot covered this evening. There's still a lot to be covered in the budget process. We're quickly coming upon that deadline, if you will, for us to start a new year. So are there any questions moving forward of where we want to go?
Just two quick things. I'm excited to meet again in 6 days and continue these conversations forward and make progress. I think we're probably going to need to meet every week or two until the budget's passed. I know I've asked for draft budgets. I think it's going to be a balance between when the legislative session ends June 2nd and when we absolutely have to pass the budget by June 30th, I think. So, let's just try to get as much information as we can ahead of time. And next board meeting, we are reading board member hours. And so if you haven't completed them, you got 6 days to get them done, or you're gonna be ready to sufficient.
Yes.
Fair warning. Right, Kelly?
Correct.
Any other, and if you have trouble with board member hours, getting to the links or whatever, feel free to give me a call or feel free to give Kelly a call. I know we can get that taken care of. Any other questions, comments from here? What is the next step, Dr. Mack? Where are we headed from this information in the budgeting process? I know we have a regular meeting in 6 days, but what is the next?
What I opened up with, the main part of making next year's budget, number one question, how do you project? That is a 0% possibility to project. 0%. And I'll entertain questions on it, because that's 0%. Number one is to do a draft budget, you must have an idea of your revenue. If we're going to keep everything the same, what is it? 5 million, deficit, something like that, just to maintain.
We talked at 4.5, but then you look at, the needs that we had to meet for special ed and the needs that were required to meet by policy, local and legal for, armed, security at our campuses, then, that has gone up significantly. So, we will do what we can to provide those numbers to you as best we can. But keep in mind that the deficit will probably come in higher than what we adopted, given that the requirements of what we have. As we mentioned today, contracted services do cost more than what we have. Just speaking of that, Chief Cunningham is doing an excellent job of keeping our schools safe and secure. But as a staff shortage there leads us to contracted services. And at that point, they're going to demand more as a contractor than they would if they were on a full-time staff.
And if you jump right in, Vince, and you said, we're gonna pay whatever contractor service, what might that do to the deficit?
It's gonna increase.
Right.
Same thing with special ed. You have to provide the services,
Deeper.
pay a lawsuit, you have to pay $1 million in a lawsuit potentially. So, you provide the services that are required, and ultimately, we're doing what we can to provide the best services to students with what we have available.
So to kind of summarize, we can get you a grant, it just won't be of any value.
No, this is something that's gonna evolve every
Yes.
week.
Yes,
I mean,
exactly.
I mean,
And some things may come sooner.
legislation gets passed and you update your revenue. Contract services get approved and you update your, custodial services number, you just evolve it. So at least we start to see the picture, maybe earlier than June.
Yes, and my recommendation would be right now, I can tell you, if we're gonna have staff stay and respect people's time, I don't know how much will get done with so many question marks. Not that we don't want to,
No,
it's just, it's not there.
get as much done as we can and trudge through it.
And if we don't need to meet, we don't need to keep staff.
Yeah.
Yep.
And one last comment on that is, to avoid giving any type of false hope to our campuses, to our departments. We're being very cautious and trying to be very conservative on what kind of allocation we give out. We'd rather give something and give something a little bit more on top of it, as opposed to giving what we gave last year and then having to scale all that back at the last minute. Because that can come as a shock, and it did for our campuses, just the feedback that I received. So those cuts that we had to make, and those moves we had to make to try to address the deficit last year to get it down, those were made in a fashion that were harder for the campuses to adjust to. So trying to do it the opposite way, where we're being a little bit more conservative of what we can give it an allocation, and then trying to tie it to the required spending allotments that we are at least aware of right now. That's so at least at that point it's budgeted towards a required spend, and it's something that may not necessarily hurt the overall bottom line of a budget that the campus is going to receive. So that's the mentality, that's the mindset. Try to give something minimal rather than give something that's what we've always given, because just my research, talking to other CFOs, talking to peers, there's really no rhyme or reason or scientific formula for getting that allocation. Working with my mentor, seeing that the best approach that he proposed is give something here, and then anything you give on top of that tied to a lot. So that way, if we have to scale back, we're scaling, it's not so, I guess shocking when you have to adjust the cuts like we did last year. Just one of those.
If you roll it out, now you're taking it away.
Correct. It's rather give something and then, okay, as we get those updates, we can give a little bit more. But as long as it's tied to a required spending allotment or an allotment that's given by the state.
Questions? One question that I ask myself is looking ahead, knowing our deficit, where the state, they're throwing all the balls in the air, we don't know anything at this point. Is there another way for us to quote unquote compensate staff and everyone without going further in the thing that keeps coming to me up is time? Is there a way to look at our calendar and whittle down to where we can give some more time? So that would be a question that I don't know. I don't know what our hours are. I know I've looked at the calendar that was approved in, I believe it was January, if my mind is serving me right. But how many extra days do we have? Is that something that we can have a conversation about to say, okay, we may be able to give more time to our teachers and staff to have off as a compensation in that form or fashion. So just something, I don't know where the board stands on that or what the numbers are. I tried to do it, but I got.
Well, it's a great question, because if you remember when we talked about charter buses, it has to be a decision between paying for charter buses and early releases, which costs you minutes. And so, yes, I think we need to have that conversation and visit all the implications of less time.
Correct.
We all want to give the benefit of time. I think that, and I think we should. Any way we can add a benefit. And I know, moreover, I would say we even need to have a conversation about armed security as well. You know, just like you're saying, outside of the bottom dollar to begin with, how do we attract armed security when the city's having a hard time? We're so absolutely is the answer.
So we have a meeting next week, and then from there.
I'd like to meet with my team after this meeting.
Okay.
And get back to you.
Okay. Is that good with everybody? All right. The last item on our agenda is adjournment. Is there a motion? There's a first and a second. Any further? Trent and Corbett. Okay. Any other questions? All right, we will adjourn this meeting at 7:11. Thank you all.
In favor?
Oh.